How did I end up sitting in a bank conference room? Realizing my daughter never lost a child, she erased me instead. I stepped back when she told me to stop asking questions, believing I was respecting her pain. Months later, one document proved I had been lied to on purpose. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. The phone call came on a Thursday evening. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sorting through invoices from the insulation jobs we'd completed that week. The regional contracts had been solid that quarter, and I was feeling quietly satisfied with how the business was holding steady. 54 years old, and I still ran my crew with the same attention to detail I'd had at 30. Alina's name flashed on the screen. I picked up immediately. Dad. Her voice was flat, hollow. Hey, sweetheart, everything okay? There was a pause, and then she said it. The baby didn't make it. My chest went tight. What? She didn't survive the birth. I'm still at the hospital. I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. I'm coming right now. Which hospital? No, don't. Alina, I need to be there. I said no. Her tone cut through me like sheet metal. You can't handle you right now. I need space. I forced myself to breathe. Okay, I understand. Just tell me what happened. Was there a complication? Did they say, Dad, stop asking questions. I'm just trying to understand. Stop. Her voice cracked, but it wasn't grief. It was anger. You always do this. You push and you don't listen. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want you here. Just leave me alone. The line went quiet except for her breathing. Alina, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I have to go. She hung up. I stood there in my kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My granddaughter. Gone. And my daughter didn't want me near her. I set the phone down carefully, like it might shatter. For a long time, I didn't move. The invoices sat untouched. The overhead light buzzed faintly. Outside, a car drove past, its headlights sweeping across the wall. I thought about calling Oren, her husband, but if Alina didn't want me there, he probably wouldn't either. They'd been married 3 years, and in that time, I'd watched him become an extension of her moods. When she was warm, he was friendly. When she turned cold, he disappeared. I typed out a message to her. I love you. I'm here whenever you're ready. Then I deleted it. I typed another. Please let me know if there's anything I can do. I deleted that one too. Finally, I just turned the phone face down on the table and sat back down. The invoices blurred in front of me. I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to the same questions. What had gone wrong? Had there been signs? Why hadn't she told me sooner? But more than that, I kept hearing the sharpness in her voice. The way she'd shut me down. Like I was an intrusion. Like my concern was an attack. I'd always been careful with Alina. Ever since her mother left when she was 12, I'd learned to read her moods, to know when to step forward and when to give her room. I thought I'd gotten good at it. I thought we had an understanding. Apparently, I'd been wrong. The next morning, I drove to the hospital anyway. I didn't go inside. I just sat in the parking lot watching the entrance. I told myself I wouldn't approach her. I just wanted to be nearby, in case she changed her mind, in case she needed me. 3 hours passed. I saw Oren walk out alone, carrying a duffel bag. He didn't look around. He got into his car and drove away. I waited another hour. No one came. Finally, I started the engine and left. Over the next few days, I kept my phone close. I checked it constantly, waiting for a message, an update, anything. Nothing came. I wanted to respect her boundaries. I wanted to give her the space she'd asked for. But it felt wrong. It felt like abandonment. On the 5th day, I broke down and sent a text. Thinking of you. Let me know if you need anything. She didn't respond. A week later, I tried calling. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. I kept working. I kept running the business. I kept going through the motions. But something had shifted. There was a weight in my chest that wouldn't lift. I started going over everything in my mind. Every conversation we'd had during her pregnancy. Every time she'd seemed distant or short with me. I tried to find the moment where I'd gone wrong. The moment where I'd pushed too hard or said the wrong thing. But I couldn't find it. She'd been excited when she first told me she was pregnant. I'd been excited too. I'd helped her set up the nursery. I'd bought her books on parenting. I'd offered to help with expenses, and she'd accepted without hesitation. Everything had seemed fine, until it wasn't. 2 weeks after the call, I was at my office when my crew foreman, Danny, knocked on the door. Boss, you got a minute? I waved him in. He hesitated in the doorway. You doing okay? You've been kind of, I don't know, quiet. I nodded. I'm fine. You sure? Because if you need to take some time, I'm fine, Danny. What do you need? He looked at me for another moment, then shrugged. Just wanted to check in. After he left, I sat there staring at the schedule on my desk. Jobs lined up through the end of the year. Crews deployed across 3 counties. Everything running smoothly. It should have felt like enough. It didn't. I pulled out my phone and opened the family group chat. The last message was from 3 weeks ago. Alina had sent a photo of the nursery, freshly painted. I'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Since then, nothing. I scrolled up through the history. Messages from me, asking how she was feeling. Messages from her, short and polite. Messages from Oren, even shorter. I started typing. Hey, just wanted to see how you're both doing. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it and put the phone away. That weekend, I drove past their apartment. I didn't stop. I just slowed down as I went by, looking up at the 3rd-floor windows. The curtains were drawn. I felt pathetic. But I kept driving. 3 weeks after the call, I was at a cafe near my office when I overheard 2 women talking at the next table. She said they're just trying to start fresh. New chapter, you know? I get that. Sometimes you need a clean break. Exactly. She said it's been hard with all the interference. Family drama. God, I can't imagine. At least they're handling it. I wasn't sure if they were talking about Alina. The cafe wasn't far from where she lived, but it could have been anyone. Still, the words stuck with me. Interference, family drama. I thought about the way she'd snapped at me on the phone, the way she'd told me to stop asking questions, the way she'd shut me out completely. Had I been interfering? I replayed every interaction, every offer of help, every question I'd asked. I couldn't see it. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe I was too close to see what I was doing wrong. I paid for my coffee and left. That night, I sat in my garage, the space I used for planning and organizing. I had a workbench in the corner, tools hanging neatly on pegboards, boxes of receipts and contracts stacked along the wall. I pulled out a calendar and started marking dates. The day Alina told me she was pregnant, the day I helped with the nursery, the day she stopped responding to my messages. The day of the call. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I needed to see it laid out in front of me. I needed to understand. As I sat there, staring at the timeline, a notification buzzed on my phone. A calendar reminder. Trust Review, Annual. I'd set it months ago. Every year I reviewed the family trust with my attorney, made sure everything was in order, updated beneficiaries if needed. I stared at the reminder for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and started going through the trust documents. Everything was standard. Alina was the primary beneficiary. In the event of her passing, the assets would go to her children, if she had children. I scrolled down to the notes section. There was a clause about dependent verification, tax purposes, estate planning. I made a note to ask my attorney about it. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the silence of the garage, wondering why grief felt so much like being erased. A month passed, then another. The silence from Alina became normal. I stopped expecting her to reach out. I stopped checking my phone every 10 minutes. I learned to live with the absence. But I didn't forget. At work, I kept myself busy. We had 3 major projects running simultaneously, and I threw myself into them. I reviewed every estimate personally. I visited every job site. I checked every installation. My crew started joking that I was turning into a micromanager. Maybe I was. But it gave me something to focus on besides the hollow space where my daughter used to be. One afternoon, Danny caught me inspecting a completed job for the 3rd time. Boss, it's perfect. You've checked it twice already. I nodded. I know. So why are we still here? I didn't have an answer for that. He leaned against the truck, arms crossed. You want to talk about it? About what? Whatever's eating at you. I looked at him. Danny had worked for me for almost 15 years. He was good at his job and knew when to keep his mouth shut. But he also knew me well enough to see through the facade. Family stuff, I said finally. Your daughter? I nodded. She's still not talking to you? No. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, That's rough, man. I'm sorry. It is what it is. You know what happened? I mean, why she's shutting you out? I shook my head. Not really. She lost the baby. She didn't want me around. That's all I know. Danny frowned. That doesn't make sense. You'd think she'd want support. You'd think. Have you tried reaching out? A few times. She doesn't respond. And her husband? Same. Danny shook his head. That's messed up. I didn't disagree. We finished the inspection and headed back to the office. On the drive, I found myself thinking about what Danny had said. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. Grief was supposed to bring people together, not push them apart. Unless it wasn't grief. The thought came unbidden, and I pushed it away. Of course it was grief. What else would it be? But the thought lingered. Back at the office, I sat down at my desk and pulled up the family group chat again. Still no new messages. I scrolled through the old ones, looking for clues, looking for something I'd missed. There was a message from 2 months ago. Alina had written, "Oren and I are working on some boundaries. We need to focus on us right now." I'd responded, "Of course. Whatever you need." At the time, I'd thought she was just preparing for the baby, setting up their little family unit. It seemed reasonable. But now, looking at it again, I wondered. Boundaries? What kind of boundaries? I kept scrolling. Further back. 6 months ago, she'd written, "Dad, I appreciate everything you've done, but we need to handle things ourselves from now on." I'd sent back a thumbs up. I thought I was being supportive, giving her independence. But maybe she'd been pushing me away even then. I closed the chat and leaned back in my chair. The office was quiet. Most of the crew had gone home for the day. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I thought about the money I'd given her over the years, the help with rent when she was in college, the down payment on her car, the furniture for the apartment. I'd never kept track. It wasn't about keeping score. She was my daughter. That's what parents do. But I started adding it up in my head anyway. Rough estimates, 20,000, 30, more. It didn't matter. I'd give it again in a heartbeat. But I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere along the way, my help had become interference. That night, I went to a neighborhood gathering. It was one of those community events held at the local family hall. I didn't usually go to these things, but I needed to get out of the house. I needed to be around people. I stood near the refreshment table holding a cup of coffee I wasn't drinking, watching families interact, parents chasing toddlers, couples laughing, older folks sitting together, comfortable in their silence. I felt like an outsider. Someone tapped my shoulder. I turned. It was Lydia, a woman I knew vaguely from the neighborhood association. "Evan, right?" "Yeah, hi. How are you? I haven't seen you at one of these in a while." "I've been busy, work," she nodded. "I hear you run an insulation company. That's great. It keeps me occupied. And your daughter, Alina, how's she doing?" The question hit me like a gut punch. I kept my face neutral. "She's fine." "I thought I heard she had a baby recently. Congratulations." I stared at her. "What?" "Oh, maybe I got that wrong. I could have sworn someone mentioned it." My heart was pounding. "Who told you that?" "I don't remember. Maybe I'm mixing her up with someone else. Sorry." She walked away, leaving me standing there, gripping the coffee cup so hard it started to buckle. Had a baby, not lost a baby. Had a baby. I set the cup down and walked outside. The cool air hit my face, but it didn't help. My mind was racing. Lydia could have been mistaken. She could have misheard. It didn't mean anything, but the doubt was there now. Planted. Growing. I pulled out my phone and opened the message thread with Alina. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I started typing. "I heard something strange today. Can we talk?" I deleted it. I typed, "Are you okay? I'm worried." I deleted that too. Finally, I just put the phone away and walked to my car. The next morning, I couldn't focus. I sat at my desk staring at spreadsheets that made no sense. Numbers blurred together. I kept thinking about what Lydia had said. Maybe I'm mixing her up with someone else. But what if she wasn't? I grabbed my jacket and drove to Alina's apartment. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to see her, to talk to her, to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind. I parked across the street and looked up at her windows. The curtains were still drawn. I sat there for 20 minutes, debating whether to go up. Finally, I got out and walked to the building entrance. I pressed the buzzer for her unit. No answer. I pressed it again. Still nothing. I tried calling her phone. It rang once, then went to voicemail. I stood there in the lobby, feeling foolish, feeling desperate. A woman came out of the elevator carrying a laundry basket. She glanced at me, then looked away quickly. "Excuse me," I said. She stopped. "Yes?" "Do you know the couple in Unit 3C, Alina and Oren?" She hesitated. "I've seen them." "Have you seen them recently?" "Why are you asking?" "I'm Alina's father. I'm just trying to check in on her." The woman's expression softened slightly. "I saw them yesterday. They looked fine." Did you see a baby?" She frowned. "A baby?" "Yes. They had a daughter." I didn't see a baby, but I don't really pay attention. She shifted the basket and walked past me out the door. I stood there, my pulse hammering in my ears. They looked fine. I left the building and sat in my car, staring at the apartment windows. Something was wrong. I could feel it, but I didn't know what. And I didn't know how to find out without coming across as the overbearing father Alina clearly thought I was. I drove back to the office and tried to work, but my mind kept circling back to the same questions. Why would Lydia think Alina had a baby? Why wouldn't the neighbor have seen one? Why was Alina avoiding me so completely? That evening, I sat in my garage again, surrounded by the timeline I'd built. I added a new note. Lydia, mentioned baby. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up my calendar. The trust review was coming up in 2 weeks. I'd be meeting with my attorney, Roman Keats, to go over everything. Maybe I'd ask him some questions. Not about the trust, about how to find answers without breaking what was left of my relationship with my daughter. I closed the laptop and sat in the dim light, wondering how I'd become so lost in my own family. The meeting with Petra Illich wasn't supposed to be significant. She'd been my accountant for almost 12 years, and our annual reviews were usually straightforward. Go over the books, confirm everything was in order, file the necessary forms. But this time, something was different. I sat across from her in her small, cluttered office. Papers were stacked neatly on every surface, labeled and color-coded. Petra was meticulous. She caught things other people missed. Everything looks good overall, she said, flipping through a folder. Revenue is up from last year. Expenses are manageable. No red flags. Good, she paused, frowning slightly. Although there is one small thing. What? It's probably nothing. Just a tax anomaly. I leaned forward. What kind of anomaly? She pulled out a separate sheet and slid it across the desk. You claimed a dependent last year, for tax purposes. Yeah, Alina, same as always. Right, but there's a note here about a qualifying child, under her household. I stared at the paper. What does that mean? It means someone in her household qualifies as a dependent. Usually that's a child under 17. My throat went dry. When was this filed? Petra checked the date. April, so about 6 months ago. 6 months ago, before Alina told me she'd lost the baby. I tried to keep my voice steady. Could it be a mistake? It's possible, but these forms are usually pretty accurate. They pull from birth certificates, social security numbers, that kind of thing. So there's a child, registered. Petra looked at me carefully. Are you saying you didn't know? I didn't answer. She set the folder down. Evan, is everything okay? I don't know. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do you want me to look into it? Can you? I can request verification. It might take a few days. Do it. She made a note. Okay, I'll let you know what I find. I left her office feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. A dependent, a qualifying child, registered under Alina's household. Either it was a mistake, or my daughter had lied to me. I didn't want to believe the latter, but the pieces were starting to fit together in a way I couldn't ignore. I drove to the bank next. I needed to check something. The branch manager, a woman named Alina, greeted me with a professional smile. Mr. Mercer, what can I do for you? I need to review some account activity. Of course. Which account? The trust account. She pulled it up on her computer. What are you looking for? Any activity related to dependents. Beneficiaries. That kind of thing? She scrolled through the records. There are some automatic transfers. Benefits tied to dependent care. Benefits? Yes. It looks like they were activated about 7 months ago. 7 months. What kind of benefits? Child-related, medical expenses, daycare, that sort of thing. I felt like I was going to be ill. Who activated them? It doesn't say specifically, but it would have required documentation. Proof of a qualifying dependent. Like a birth certificate? Exactly. I sat there, processing. Someone had provided documentation. Someone had activated benefits. For a child Alina claimed was gone. Elena looked at me with concern. Is there a problem, Mr. Mercer? I don't know yet. If you need copies of the documentation, I can request them, but it might take a few days. Please, she made a note. I'll call you when they are ready. I left the bank and sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel. My hands were shaking. This wasn't grief. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was something else entirely. I drove home and went straight to the garage. I pulled out the timeline and added new entries. Tax-dependent, bank benefits. 7 months ago. I stared at the dates. Then I grabbed my phone and opened my browser. I searched for public records, birth certificates, registration databases. Most of them required specific information I didn't have: names, dates, hospital records. But I found one database that allowed broader searches. I entered Alina's name, Oren's name, the approximate date range. It took a few minutes to load. Then the result appeared. A birth registration, filed 8 months ago, healthy, full term, no complications. I stared at the screen, reading the details over and over. My granddaughter was alive, and my daughter had erased me from her life to keep it that way. I set the phone down and sat in the silence of the garage. My chest felt tight. My mind was racing. But underneath the shock and the anger, there was something else. Clarity. For the first time in months, I understood what was happening. Alina hadn't lost a child. She'd simply decided I wasn't going to be part of raising one, and she'd lied to make sure I stayed away. I thought about confronting her, walking to her apartment, demanding answers, but I knew how that would go. She'd deny it. She'd twist it. She'd make me feel like I was the problem. I'd spent months doing that to myself already. No, if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. I picked up my phone and called Roman Keats. Evan, good to hear from you. How are things? I need to move up our trust review. Is there a problem? There might be. Can you meet this week? Let me check my calendar. There was a pause. I have an opening Thursday afternoon. I'll take it. Okay. Should I prepare anything specific? Beneficiary verification, dependent clauses, and lawful access routes for grandparents. Another pause. That's a very specific list. I know. Evan, what's going on? I'll explain when I see you. I hung up and sat back in my chair. This wasn't about anger. It wasn't about revenge. It was about the truth, and I was going to make sure it came out. The next few days passed slowly. I kept working, I kept running the business, but my mind was elsewhere. Petra called on Wednesday. I have the verification you asked for. And? There's a dependent registered under Alina Vorsk, born 8 months ago. Healthy? According to the records, yes. I closed my eyes. Thank you, Petra. Evan, are you okay? I will be. I hung up and added the confirmation to my timeline. Elena from the bank called the next morning. I have those documents ready for you. I'll come by this afternoon. When I arrived, she handed me a folder. Inside were copies of the benefit activation forms, signed by Alina, dated 7 months ago. Proof. I took the folder and left without saying anything. Thursday afternoon, I sat in Roman Keats's office. He was a formal man, always dressed in a suit, always precise in his language. We'd worked together for years, and I trusted him. He reviewed the documents I'd brought, the tax forms, the bank records, the birth registration. When he finished, he set them down and looked at me. This is a complicated situation. I know. You understand that legally you don't have automatic rights as a grandparent. I know that too. But, he continued, there are routes, especially if deception is involved, especially if financial instruments are being misused. Explain. He pulled out a legal pad and started writing. The trust you established lists Alina as the primary beneficiary, but it also includes provisions for her dependents. If she's claiming benefits under false pretenses, specifically if she's represented the status of a dependent inaccurately, that could be grounds for amendment. Amendment. You can revise the terms, add conditions, require verification. Can I freeze access? He looked at me carefully. If there's evidence of deception, yes. You can freeze distributions pending an investigation. How do I do that? You sign a revised directive. I file it with the bank. The freeze goes into effect immediately. I sat back. And then what? Then you request a formal review, you present your evidence, and you let the facts speak for themselves. What happens to Alina? If the deception is proven, she loses discretionary access to the trust. She'd still be a beneficiary, but distributions would require third-party verification. Meaning? Meaning she doesn't control the money anymore. I thought about that, about what it would mean, about how she'd react. Then I thought about the lie, about the months of silence, about the granddaughter I'd been erased from. Do it, I said. Roman nodded. I'll draft the documents. We'll need to schedule a meeting with the bank. Something formal, on record. When? How soon do you want this to happen? As soon as possible. He made a note. I'll set it up for next week. I left his office feeling something I hadn't felt in months. control, not over Alina, not over Oren, but over the truth, and that was enough. The pediatric clinic was in a strip mall on the east side of town. I'd driven past it 100 times without paying attention. But now, sitting in the parking lot, I couldn't look away. The name matched the one from the bank transaction, the one Petra had flagged. I wasn't here to confront anyone. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. But I needed to see it. I needed confirmation that I wasn't imagining things. I got out of the car and walked toward the entrance. The waiting area was bright and cheerful, decorated with cartoon animals and colorful murals. A few parents sat with their children, flipping through magazines or staring at their phones. I approached the reception desk. A young woman looked up and smiled. "Can I help you?" I'm looking for some information." "Are you a patient?" "No, my daughter is. Or her daughter is." The receptionist's smile faltered slightly. "What's the name?" "Vorsk, Alina Vorsk." She typed into her computer. "I see a patient under that account, but I can't share details without authorization." "I'm the grandfather." "I understand, but I still need authorization from the parent." I nodded. "Of course, I understand." I started to turn away, then stopped. "Can you tell me if the patient is active, current?" She hesitated. "I can tell you the account is active. Recent visits." "Recent as in this month?" "I really can't give specifics." "Thank you." I left the clinic and sat in my car, staring at the building. Recent visits, active account. My granddaughter was alive. She was being taken to appointments. She was growing up. And I was being kept away from all of it. I drove home and went straight to the garage. The timeline had expanded. I'd added so much information over the past week that it covered an entire wall. Dates, documents, transactions, patterns. I stood there, looking at it all, and felt the weight of what I was about to do. This wasn't just about the truth anymore. It was about consequences. Alina had made a choice. She'd decided to erase me, to lie to me, to use my money while keeping me at arm's length, and now I was going to make sure that choice had a cost. I pulled out my phone and called Roman. "Evan, I was just about to call you. The meeting is scheduled for next Friday, 10 a.m. at the main branch." "Who's going to be there?" "You, me, the bank's trust officer, and anyone listed on the account. That includes Alina." "She doesn't know yet?" "Not unless you've told her." "I haven't." "Then she'll get a formal notice early next week. Required attendance for account review." "Will she know what it's about?" "The notice will be vague, just a routine review. She won't know the specifics until the meeting." "Good." There was a pause. "Evan, are you sure about this?" "Yes." "Once we start, it's going to be difficult to walk back." "I'm not planning to walk back." "Okay, I'll finalize everything and send you copies." I hung up and sat down at my workbench. I pulled out the folder of documents I'd collected. Tax forms, bank records, birth registration, clinic confirmation. Everything was there. Over the next few days, I organized it all. I made copies. I labeled everything clearly. I created a summary document outlining the timeline and the evidence. I worked methodically, the way I approached every job. Step by step, detail by detail. This wasn't emotional, this was procedural. And I was good at procedures. By Wednesday, I had everything ready. I put it all in a briefcase and set it by the door. Then I waited. On Thursday, Petra called. "I got a strange email today." "From who?" "Alina. She's asking about tax filings, specifically dependents." "What did you tell her?" "I told her I couldn't discuss your account without authorization. She didn't seem happy." "I bet." "Evan, did something happen?" "She got a notice about the trust review." "Ah, that explains it." "Did she say anything else?" "She asked if there was a problem. I told her she'd have to discuss it at the meeting." "Thank you." "Do you need me to be there?" "No, but keep your records handy. I might need them afterward." "Understood." I hung up and checked my email. There was a message from Roman with the meeting agenda. It was brief, professional. No indication of what was really going to happen. Perfect. That evening, I tried to eat dinner, but I wasn't hungry. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the briefcase by the door. Tomorrow, everything would change. Alina would walk into that conference room expecting a routine review. Maybe she'd be annoyed. Maybe she'd be defensive. But she wouldn't be prepared, because she didn't know I knew. And that was the point. I thought about calling her, giving her a warning, a chance to explain. But I'd given her months of chances, months of silence, months of waiting. She'd made her choice. Now I was making mine. I went to bed early but didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, running through the meeting in my head. What I'd say, what she'd say, how it would unfold. By the time the sun came up, I'd gone through it 100 times. I got dressed, I made coffee, I picked up the briefcase and walked to my car. The drive to the bank felt longer than usual. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I parked and sat there for a moment, looking at the building. This was it. I got out and walked inside. Roman was already there, standing near the conference room entrance. He nodded when he saw me. Ready? Yes. Alina's not here yet. Neither is Oren. They will be. We walked into the conference room. It was small and plain. A long table, chairs, a whiteboard on one wall. The trust officer, a man named Gregory, was setting up paperwork. Mr. Mercer, he said, shaking my hand, thank you for coming. Of course. We sat down. Roman placed his folder on the table. I set my briefcase beside my chair, and then we waited. At 5 minutes past 10, the door opened. Alina walked in, followed by Oren. She looked annoyed. He looked uncomfortable. She glanced at me, then at Roman, then at Gregory. What's this about? She asked. Gregory gestured to the chairs. Please have a seat. We'll explain everything. She hesitated, then sat down. Oren sat beside her, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Roman cleared his throat. Thank you both for coming. This is a formal review of the family trust established by Mr. Evan Mercer. We're here to verify certain details and ensure compliance with the terms. Alina frowned. Compliance? What does that mean? It means we need to confirm the accuracy of the information on file, specifically regarding dependents. Her face went pale. I watched her carefully. This was the moment she realized I knew. She glanced at Oren. He didn't move, then she looked at me. Dad, what is this? I didn't answer. Roman continued. We have some documents to review. If you'll bear with us, this shouldn't take long. He slid a folder across the table toward her. She opened it slowly. Inside were copies of the tax forms, the bank records, the birth registration. Her hands started to shake. This is... She trailed off, staring at the papers. This is verification, Roman said calmly. Verification that a dependent was registered. Benefits were activated. Claims were made. She looked up at him. So what? So the trust has specific provisions regarding accuracy. If false representations are made, the trustee has the right to amend the terms. False representations? Her voice rose. What are you talking about? I leaned forward. You told me the baby didn't make it. She froze. You told me she was gone. You told me not to ask questions. You shut me out completely. But she's alive, isn't she? Alina's jaw tightened. This is none of your business. You made it my business when you claimed benefits from the trust. I'm entitled to those benefits. Under false pretenses. She stood up. This is insane. You can't do this. Roman spoke quietly. Actually, he can. The trust is his. He established it. He funds it. And he has the right to amend it if the terms are violated. I didn't violate anything. You lied, I said. You lied to me for months. You let me believe my granddaughter was gone. You used my money while keeping me out of her life. Because I didn't want you in her life, she shouted. The room went silent. She stood there, breathing hard, her face flushed. I didn't want you interfering, she continued. I didn't want you hovering. I didn't want you controlling everything like you always do. I've never controlled you. You have. My whole life you've been there, watching, judging, managing. I couldn't breathe. I needed space. I needed to do this on my own. So you lied? Yes. She slammed her hand on the table. Yes, I lied. Because it was the only way to make you back off. Oren reached for her arm, but she pulled away. I looked at her, this woman who used to be my daughter, and I didn't recognize her. You could have just told me, I said quietly. You could have asked for space, set boundaries. I would have respected them. No, you wouldn't have. You don't know that. I know you, Dad. You don't let go. You never have. I sat back. Well, now I am. She blinked. What? I nodded to Roman. He opened his folder and pulled out a document. This is a revised trust directive, he said. Effective immediately, all discretionary distributions are frozen pending independent verification of dependent status. Future distributions will require third-party authorization. You remain a beneficiary, but you no longer control access. Alina stared at him. You can't do that. It's already done. Gregory slid a paper across the table. This was filed this morning. The changes are in effect. She grabbed the paper, reading frantically. You're cutting me off? I'm ensuring accuracy, I said. If you want access to the trust, you'll verify the truth. You'll provide documentation. You'll prove the claims you've made. And if I don't? Then you don't get the money. She looked at Oren. He was staring at the table, silent. Say something, she hissed at him. He didn't. She turned back to me. You're really going to do this? You're going to punish me for wanting independence? I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting what's mine. It's not yours. You gave it to me. No, I established a trust, with terms, and you violated them. She stood there shaking, her eyes filling with tears. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. I hate you, she said. I didn't flinch. I know. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the room. Oren hesitated, then followed her. The door slammed shut. I sat there staring at the empty chairs across from me. Gregory cleared his throat. Well, that was intense. Roman closed his folder. The directive is filed. The freeze is in place. She'll have 30 days to respond with verification if she wants to contest. She won't, I said. You're sure? Yes. Because Alina wouldn't admit the truth publicly. She'd rather lose the money than admit she'd lied. And that was fine. I stood up and picked up my briefcase. Thank you both. I walked out of the conference room, through the bank, and into the parking lot. The sun was bright. The air was cool, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The days after the meeting were quiet. Too quiet. I kept expecting something, a call, a message, a confrontation, but nothing came. Alina didn't reach out. Oren didn't reach out. The silence was absolute. At first, I thought maybe she was regrouping, planning her next move, but as the days turned into a week, I realized the truth. She was done, and so was I. I went back to work with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The jobs ran smoothly. The crew responded well. Everything fell into place the way it was supposed to. Danny noticed the change. You seem different, boss. Different how? I don't know. Lighter, maybe. I shrugged. Just focused. Whatever it is, it's working. Keep it up. I didn't tell him what had happened. I didn't tell anyone. It wasn't their business. It was between me and Alina, and it was over. Petra called midweek. I heard the meeting went well. Who told you that? Roman. He said you handled it perfectly. I just told the truth. That's all you needed to do. Yeah, she paused. How are you feeling? Relieved. Good. You deserve that. I thanked her and hung up. That evening, I sat in my garage looking at the timeline I'd built. All the dates, all the documents, all the evidence. I didn't need it anymore. I took it all down, piece by piece, and filed it away in a box. Then I put the box on a high shelf and closed the door. It was done. The following Monday, I got a notification from the bank. Alina had requested a copy of the trust documents. Not to contest, just to review. I approved the request. 2 days later, I got another notification. She'd withdrawn her claim for dependent benefits. No explanation, no message, just a quiet withdrawal. I sat at my desk, staring at the notification. She'd given up? Part of me thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated. But I didn't feel any of that. I just felt tired. I closed the notification and went back to work. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new normal. I ran the business, I met with clients, I checked on job sites, I kept moving forward. But there was an emptiness that hadn't been there before, a space where Alina used to be. I told myself it was better this way, that she'd made her choice, that I'd done what I had to do. But late at night, when the house was quiet and I was alone with my thoughts, I wondered if it had been worth it. Not the truth was always worth it, but the cost. I'd lost my daughter, maybe permanently. And for what? To prove I was right? To protect my money? No. To protect my dignity. To refuse to be erased. And that, I decided, was enough. One evening, I got a call from Roman. Evan, I wanted to give you an update. Go ahead. The freeze is still in place. Alina hasn't filed any contest. The 30-day window closes next week. And then? And then the revised terms become permanent, unless she takes legal action. She won't. I agree. She'd have to admit the deception publicly. She's not going to do that. So it's over. Effectively, yes. I thanked him and hung up. It's over. The words echoed in my mind. I walked to the garage and opened the box I'd stored on the shelf. I pulled out the timeline, the documents, the evidence. I looked at it all one last time. Then I carried it to the backyard and built a small fire in the metal drum I used for burning scrap wood. I fed the papers into the flames, one by one, watching them curl and blacken and disappear. When it was done, I stood there in the dim light, watching the smoke rise into the night sky. It's over. And I was still standing. The notification came on a Tuesday morning. A meeting request from the bank. Mandatory attendance for all parties involved in the trust review. I stared at the email, frowning. The 30-day window had closed. The freeze was permanent. What else was there to discuss? I called Roman. Did you get the meeting request? I did. I'm not sure what it's about. The bank didn't provide details. Should I be concerned? I don't think so. It might just be a formality, closing out the review process. Alina will be there? The notice went to all parties, so yes. I hung up and sat back in my chair. One more meeting, one more confrontation, and then, finally, it would be finished. The meeting was scheduled for Friday at 10 a.m. Same conference room, same setup. I arrived early, carrying nothing this time. No briefcase, no documents. I didn't need them anymore. Roman was already there, along with Gregory, the trust officer. Morning, Evan. Morning. Any idea what this is about? None. Gregory looked up from his laptop. We're just finalizing some administrative details. Shouldn't take long. I nodded and sat down. At exactly 10 o'clock, the door opened. Alina walked in. Alone. No Oren this time. She looked different. Tired. Thinner. Her eyes were shadowed. Her expression guarded. She sat down across from me without saying a word. Gregory cleared his throat. Thank you both for coming. This is a final administrative review to close out the trust modification process. We need to confirm a few details and ensure all parties are aware of the current terms. He slid a document across the table. This is the revised trust directive. As of last week, it's been formally filed and is now in effect. Alina glanced at it but didn't pick it up. Gregory continued. The freeze on discretionary distributions remains in place. Future access requires third-party verification of dependent status. All other terms remain unchanged. Alina's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Do you have any questions? Gregory asked. She shook her head. Mr. Mercer? No. All right. Then I just need both of you to sign this acknowledgement form. It confirms you've been informed of the changes and understand the terms. He slid 2 forms across the table. I picked up a pen and signed mine immediately. Alina stared at hers. Ms. Vorsk? Gregory prompted gently. She picked up the pen, her hand shaking slightly, then she set it down. I need to say something first. Gregory glanced at Roman, then nodded. Of course. She looked at me. Her eyes were red, but she wasn't crying. I know what you think of me, she said quietly. I know you think I'm selfish, that I used you, that I lied to hurt you. I didn't respond. And maybe you're right. Maybe I did all of those things. She took a breath. But you don't understand what it was like. Growing up with you, always feeling like I had to be perfect, like I had to meet your standards, like I could never make a decision without you watching, judging. I never judged you, I said. You did. Every day. You just didn't realize it. I was trying to help. I know. But I didn't want help. I wanted freedom. I wanted to be my own person, and I didn't know how to tell you that without hurting you. She looked down at the table. So I lied. I told you she didn't make it because I thought it would be easier. For both of us. I thought you'd move on. I thought I'd finally have space to breathe. And did you? She shook her head. No, because I spent every day waiting for you to find out. Every day feeling guilty. Every day knowing I'd destroyed the one relationship that actually mattered. Her voice cracked. And now it's gone. And I did that. I know I did. The room was silent. I looked at her, this woman who used to be my little girl, and I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not even pity. Just distance. You're right, I said finally. It is gone. She flinched. Not because you lied, but because you chose to. You had 100 chances to tell me the truth, to set boundaries, to have an honest conversation, but you didn't. You chose the lie, and you kept choosing it. I know. So this isn't about forgiveness. It's about consequences. She nodded slowly. I understand. She picked up the pen and signed the form. Gregory collected the papers. Thank you both. That concludes the review. Alina stood up. She hesitated, looking at me one last time. I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't respond. She walked to the door, opened it, and left. The door clicked shut. Gregory and Roman exchanged glances. "Well," Gregory said quietly, "that's done." Roman started packing up his folder. "The trust is secure. The terms are clear. If she contests, we have everything documented." "She won't contest," I said. "You're sure?" "Yes." Because Alina had just admitted everything, on record, in front of witnesses. There was nothing left to contest. And I stood up and shook their hands. "Thank you both." "Of course, Evan. If you need anything else, just let us know." I walked out of the conference room, through the bank lobby, and into the parking lot. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and I felt absolutely nothing. I got in my car and drove home. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, staring at my phone. No messages, no missed calls, just silence. I thought about calling someone, telling them what had happened, but there was no one to call. Danny wouldn't understand. Petra would be professional, Roman would be clinical, and Alina was gone. I set the phone down and looked around the empty house. This was it. This was the life I'd chosen, the life I'd fought for. Quiet, controlled, alone. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt hollow. I got up and walked to the garage. I opened the cabinet where I kept old photo albums. I pulled one out and flipped through it. Pictures of Alina as a child, birthday parties, school events, family trips. She was smiling in every single one. I closed the album and put it back. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up and went to work. I ran my meetings, I checked on job sites. I kept moving forward. Because that's what I did. That's what I'd always done. And I wasn't going to stop now. A week later, I got a message from Petra. "Alina closed her dependent claim. Everything's been adjusted. The trust is clean. Thank you. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." I wasn't fine, but I would be. Eventually. 3 weeks after the final meeting, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name and address written in handwriting I recognized. Alina's. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single page. Handwritten. "Dad, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need to say it. You were right. About everything. I lied. I manipulated. I used you. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't change what I did. But I need you to know that I see it now. I see what I destroyed. I don't know if I'll ever be able to repair it, but I'm going to try. Not for the money. Not for the trust. Just because you deserve better than what I gave you. I hope someday you can believe that. Alina." I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, not because I didn't care, but because words didn't matter anymore. Actions mattered. And so far, Alina's actions had all pointed in one direction, away from me. If that changed, I'd know. Until then, I had nothing to say. I went back to work. The business was thriving. We'd picked up 2 new commercial contracts, and the crew was busier than ever. Danny was running the larger jobs now, and he was doing a good job. I'd started stepping back, letting him take more responsibility. It felt right. One afternoon, I was reviewing blueprints in my office when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Mr. Mercer?" A woman's voice. Professional. "Yes." "This is Jennifer Hale from Riverside Pediatrics. I'm calling about a patient inquiry." I frowned. "I don't have a patient there." "I understand, but we have a request on file from Alina Vorsk. She's authorized you as an emergency contact for her daughter." I sat up. "She what?" "She listed you as an emergency contact. I'm calling to confirm your information." "When did she do this?" "The update was filed last week." "Last week. After the letter." "Mr. Mercer?" "Yes, the information is correct." "Thank you. We'll update our records." She hung up. I sat there staring at the phone. Emergency contact. It wasn't much. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't an apology. But it was something. It was a step. I set the phone down and went back to the blueprints. But I couldn't focus. My mind kept circling back to the call, to what it meant. Alina was opening the door. Just a crack. Just enough to let me see that she was trying. The question was, did I want to walk through it? I didn't know. Not yet. Over the next few days, I found myself thinking about my granddaughter, a child I'd never met, a child I'd been erased from. But she was real. She existed. And somewhere out there, she was growing up without knowing I existed. That thought bothered me more than I wanted to admit. One evening, I was sitting in my garage when my phone buzzed. A text from Alina. "Can we talk?" I stared at the message. 3 words. No context, no explanation. I typed, "About what?" The response came quickly. "Everything." I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. Everything. That was a lot. Too much, maybe. But I typed back anyway. "When?" "Tomorrow, coffee?" I hesitated. Then, "Okay. Where?" She sent me an address. A cafe on the north side of town. I confirmed and put the phone away. The next morning, I drove to the cafe. It was small and quiet, tucked into a corner of a shopping center. I arrived early and sat by the window, watching the parking lot. At exactly 10 o'clock, Alina's car pulled in. She got out, carrying a baby carrier. My heart stopped. She walked into the cafe, and I saw her for the first time. My granddaughter. She was tiny, maybe 4 months old, wrapped in a pink blanket, sleeping peacefully. Alina set the carrier on the chair beside her and sat down across from me. We didn't speak for a long moment. Then she said, "Her name is Sophie." I looked at the baby. "Sophie." "I wanted to tell you. I should have told you from the beginning." "Why didn't you?" She looked down. "Because I was scared. I was scared you'd take over, that you'd make decisions for me, that I'd lose control. I wouldn't have done that. I know that now. But at the time, I was convinced. I was convinced that the only way to protect my life was to keep you out of it." She looked up at me. And I was wrong. I didn't respond. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she continued. "I'm not asking for the money back. I'm not asking for anything except a chance." "A chance to what?" "To let you meet her, to let you be part of her life, if you want to be." I looked at Sophie. She shifted slightly in her sleep, her tiny hand curling into a fist. "Why now?" I asked. "Because I realized something. I can't do this alone. I thought I could, but I can't. And more than that, I don't want to. I don't want Sophie to grow up without knowing you. I don't want to take that away from her." She reached across the table, but stopped short of touching my hand. "I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to rebuild it. Not for me, for her." I looked at her, at the shadows under her eyes, at the exhaustion etched into her face, at the raw honesty in her expression, and I realized something. I wasn't ready. Not yet, maybe not ever. "I need time," I said. She nodded. "I understand. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying I need time." "Okay." She stood up, carefully lifting the carrier. "Thank you for coming." I watched her walk to the door. She paused, looking back at me. "I meant what I said in the letter. I'm going to try. Even if you never forgive me, I'm going to try." Then she left. I sat there for a long time, staring at the empty chair across from me. Sophie, my granddaughter. And I didn't know if I could let her in. I didn't contact Alina after the coffee shop. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just went back to my life and tried to pretend the meeting hadn't happened. But I couldn't stop thinking about Sophie. Her tiny fist, her sleeping face, the way she'd looked so peaceful, so unaware of everything that had happened. She was innocent. She had nothing to do with the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal. She was just a baby, and she was my granddaughter. That thought kept circling back, no matter how hard I tried to push it away. One evening, I was sitting in my kitchen when my phone buzzed, a picture message from Alina. I opened it. It was Sophie, awake this time, her eyes wide and curious, a slight smile on her face. No caption, no explanation, just the picture. I stared at it for a long time. Then I saved it to my phone and set it down. The next day, another picture came. Sophie in a different outfit, still smiling. The day after that, another. Alina was sending me updates, quietly, without asking for anything in return. I didn't respond, but I didn't ask her to stop either. A week passed, then 2. The pictures kept coming. Sophie reaching for a toy. Sophie lying on a blanket. Sophie asleep in her crib. Each one felt like a small offering, a quiet apology. And slowly, something inside me started to shift. One evening, I typed a response. "She's beautiful." Alina replied immediately. "She is." Then, "Thank you for saying that." I put the phone down and sat back. That was it, just 2 messages. But it felt like progress. A few days later, she sent another text. "We're going to the park tomorrow, if you want to stop by." I stared at the message. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't pressure. It was just an invitation. I could say no, I could ignore it. But I didn't want to. I typed, "What time?" "Around 2. "Okay." The next afternoon, I drove to the park. It was a small neighborhood green space with a playground and a walking path. Families were scattered around, kids running and playing. I found Alina sitting on a bench near the swings. Sophie was in a stroller beside her. I walked over slowly. "Hi, Dad." "Hi." I sat down, leaving space between us. We didn't talk at first. We just sat there, watching the other families. Then Alina said, "She's been sleeping better. Finally." "That's good." "Yeah, it makes everything easier." I nodded. Silence settled again. After a while, Alina stood up and lifted Sophie out of the stroller. "Do you want to hold her?" I hesitated. "It's okay if you don't," she added quickly. But I found myself standing. "Okay." She handed Sophie to me carefully. The baby looked up at me with wide, curious eyes. She was lighter than I expected, warm, fragile. I held her gently, supporting her head the way I remembered from when Alina was a baby. Sophie stared at me. Then she smiled. Something in my chest loosened. "She likes you," Alina said softly. I didn't respond. I just looked at this tiny person in my arms. This little life that had been hidden from me. This connection I'd been denied. And I realized I didn't want to lose it again. "Can I come back?" I asked. Alina's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, anytime?" I handed Sophie back to her. "I'll call you." "Okay." I walked back to my car, my hand still tingling from where Sophie had gripped my finger. I didn't know if I'd fully forgiven Alina. I didn't know if things would ever be the way they were, but I knew I wanted to try. For Sophie. And maybe, eventually, for myself. Over the next few months, I started seeing Alina and Sophie regularly. Not every day, not even every week, but enough. Enough to watch Sophie grow, to see her start recognizing me, to hear her laugh. Enough to rebuild something with Alina. Not trust, not yet, but understanding. We didn't talk about the trust. We didn't talk about the lies. We just focused on the present. And slowly, it started to feel normal. One afternoon, I was at their apartment, sitting on the floor with Sophie. She was babbling, reaching for a stuffed toy I was holding just out of reach. Alina was in the kitchen, making coffee. "Dad? Yeah?" "I've been thinking about the trust." I looked up. "What about it?" "I don't want it," I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't want access to it. I don't want to fight for it. I don't want it hanging over us." "Alina, I know what the terms are. I know I'd have to verify everything, prove the truth, jump through hoops, and I don't want to do that." She came into the living room and sat down across from me. "I want to earn my own way. I want to support Sophie without relying on you. I want to prove that I can do this." I looked at her. "You don't have to prove anything." "Yes, I do. To myself." I nodded slowly. "Okay. But I want you to know something. I'm not doing this out of pride. I'm doing it because I want things to be different between us. I want us to have a relationship that isn't built on money or obligations, just family." I felt something tighten in my throat. "I'd like that." She smiled. "Good." Sophie squealed, and I turned back to her, handing her the toy. She grabbed it and immediately put it in her mouth. Alina laughed. "Everything goes in the mouth right now." "I remember." We sat there in comfortable silence, watching Sophie play. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. The bank conference room felt different this time. The same space, the same table, the same chairs. But everything had changed. I sat across from Gregory, the trust officer. Roman was beside me, as always. And next to him was Alina. "Thank you all for coming," Gregory said. "This is a final review to formalize the trust amendments and close out the previous proceedings." He slid a document across the table. "Mr. Mercer has requested an update to the trust terms. Specifically, he's removing the freeze on discretionary distributions." Alina looked at me, surprised. "Dad, you don't have to—" "I'm not finished," I said. Gregory continued. "The revised terms include a verification clause. All distributions require documented proof of dependent status, but once verified, access is restored." He slid another document toward Alina. "This is the verification form. Birth certificate, medical records, standard documentation." Alina picked it up, scanning the pages. "I've already reviewed it," Roman said. "It's straightforward. You provide the documents, they're filed, and the freeze is lifted." She looked at me. Why are you doing this? Because you were right, I said. This shouldn't be about control. It should be about family. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve this. Maybe not, but Sophie does. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Gregory cleared his throat. If you're both in agreement, I need signatures on the amendment. I picked up the pen and signed. Alina hesitated, then signed as well. Excellent, Gregory said, collecting the papers. The amendment is filed. Once the verification is complete, full access will be restored. How long does that take? Alina asked. Usually a few days. She nodded. Gregory stood. That concludes the review. Thank you both. Roman packed up his folder. I'll follow up with the final paperwork next week. Thanks, Roman. He shook my hand and left. Alina and I sat there for a moment, alone in the conference room. Thank you, she said quietly. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. For this. For giving me another chance. For being there for Sophie. I'm her grandfather. That's what I'm supposed to do. She smiled. Still, thank you. We stood and walked out together. In the parking lot, she stopped by her car. Do you want to come over for dinner tonight? Sophie's been asking for you. She can't talk yet. She babbles in your direction. That counts. I smiled. Okay, what time? 6? I'll be there. She got in her car and drove away. I stood there for a moment, watching her leave. Then I got in my own car and headed home. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pavement, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I'd won. Not because I'd been right, not because I'd proven a point, but because I'd chosen to move forward. And that, I realized, was the only victory that mattered.